Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We've got Christina Bravo. She's going to be talking to us about different autism assessment tools. It's going to be a great webinar today. But a few things before we get started. I want to let you know that we cannot see or hear the audience. We know you're out there. We have a count of how many participants are here. But you're going to need to use the chat box if you would like to ask questions or send us comments. We do love those, and we'll get to as many of your questions as we possibly can today. But good news, since we can't hear you or see you, you can feel free to enjoy your lunch or snack or drinks while we chat. If you need to step away or if this is bad timing for you, don't worry. We record all of our webinars and we put them on our YouTube channel. So after the webinar today, we will be adding this to our YouTube channel. We're also going to email a copy of the slides to you and a link to the recording on the YouTube page. So you'll have all of that information. You'll have Christina's contact information. My contact information I'm putting in the chat box so anyone can reach out to me. So again, a few things about Consolidated Planning Group, and then I'm going to turn everything over to Christina. We are located just outside of Houston, Texas, in Sugar Land, but we do serve clients all across the country. So as long as you are in the United States, we can help you. Please feel free to share these webinars with family members or friends or anyone you know who might benefit from learning this stuff. We are a holistic financial planning firm that focuses on serving the special needs community. The reason we do this is because not just that we understand how much need is out there for information in this area, and we understand how few practitioners really focus on this area, but also we understand because all four financial advisors at Consolidated Planning Group are parents to loved ones with needs. We've been doing this as a career, but because we live this as our lives. We truly understand the unique challenges that you face as parents to individuals with needs. We've been in business over 30 years, experience with planning for future, retirement planning, investments, securities, life insurance, all of that financial stuff that any other financial advisor would do for you. That's what we do. But we do it through that lens of understanding that your child is going to need your help for the rest of their life, not just the rest of your life. So we use our educational, our expertise, and our background to help your family plan for the future, not just for you, but for the next generation. We are chartered special needs consultants. We are members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are nationally certified Social Security advisors. We focus on your family's situation, and we can help you think of things like lifetime care and protection planning, transition planning. You know, there are a lot of transition periods for our kiddos. And how do you prepare for those? What do you need to do when they turn 18? All of that kind of stuff. We can help with ABLE accounts, understanding the future cost of care, and how much money needs to be in that special needs trust. And if some of these things I'm saying are just kind of new words to you, I would invite you to schedule a free consultation with us at Consolidated Planning Group and let us help you walk through what steps you should be taking at this point in your journey. We help with state and federal benefits, local resources for you, again, no matter where you are in the country. And we're here to educate and to advocate for families. We truly believe that an educated community is a strong community. And the more that we can share with the special needs community, the more empowered we all are to be able to help ourselves and others. And you know, it's quite rare to find a company like us, fewer than 0.1% of all the financial companies in the United States focus on special needs planning like we do. So if you're looking for a financial advisor who can wrap everything in your life into one under one umbrella. That's who we are. A few quick tips and key concepts that we always want people to know. And then I'm going to turn things over to our fantastic guest speaker today. But really, it's important to start planning now. It does not matter how old or young your child is. If you have a diagnosis or you think that there might be a diagnosis coming, it's time to start thinking about the future. Um, think about what's going to happen after high school. There are fantastic educational options, recreational options, vocational options, and communities, residential communities available to our loved ones. But you do have to plan ahead and think about what this is going to look like for you and your loved one and your family, what they want, what they need in their lives, and how we can help them. Be very careful. Waiting lists can be long, so check into the programs that you're interested in. Check them out early. Get your loved ones involved. So when transition periods happening, it's not such a big shock. And then finally, just be very, very careful as you're thinking of the future and who is going to take care of your loved one when you can't do it anymore. A lot of people think that, oh, it's just easy. We've got, little Jacob has his sibling, Sarah. Sarah will take care of him in the future. Well, that can cause resentment on both sides of that relationship. So just be very, very careful and do a lot of critical thinking before you assume that that's the best solution. Because, Sarah, right now, as a young person, wants to help her family and she loves her brother and she wants to be there for him. And she loves you, parents. She wants to help you. Of course, she's going to agree. But when the time comes, Sarah might find out that she's bitten off a lot more than she is willing to chew. And from the other perspective, here's little Jacob. He's had his best friend and partner in crime and sister and sibling, and they've been running mates this whole time. And now Sarah's going to step into the role of caregiver, which might feel like the role of authoritarian. And that can create a lot of drama too. So just be careful with all of that. Okay. So I'm going to turn things over to Christina. Today, we're going to be talking about what autism tests or strategies for determining autism. What's the best out there? So you're going to share your screen and we'll get going. Is that your puppy?
There we go. Yes.
And what's your dog's name, Christina?
Ezra.
Ezra. I
Yeah.
love that.
Ezra's
Thank you
actually
so
getting her space surgery today, so it all worked out perfect. It's just very quiet, and it's just me here with you all today and no dogs. So,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. That's
hmm
wonderful. Well, my giant dog Sammy sleeps on a pillow over here.
Sweet.
Christina is going to go through her slides, but please, again, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat box. Um, and thank you so much, Christina, for being here with us today and all of the participants. We truly appreciate you.
Mm. I'm very excited to be here. I've been just little by little curating this just for you all. I have a lot of material. I love doing presentations. I do trainings. I do a course, a month-long course, and every time I do one, I do it all fresh and all new and really keep everybody in mind for where I'm going in the context I'm in. So thank you all for being here. I trust this will provide something for everybody. And we're going to start somewhere that might be unexpected. Literacy. I'm here today to help you understand how to make the best choice for either you or your loved one for an assessment tool. I have my bias. I use an assessment tool called the MIGDAS 2, and we'll get into that at the end. And I think once we get there, you'll see why I choose that one. However, I'm not here to say which tool is good or bad or which one you should use. I'm here today to really help you think critically and give you the tools from the inside as someone who has been giving these assessments and working with autistic folks for over 20 years. Like what do you need to be thinking of? Because often it's the reason I do these assessments now is because it surprised me the kind of questions that people were not asking their
Mhm.
assessors and the tools. They were disappointed, just so much disappointment at the end of the assessment tools. So I'm here today to help you build a new literacy of what these tools are about and what kinds of things you need to think about. and what kinds of things you might want to research, and even ask your assessors. So literacy, what is our current literacy of autism and of autism tests and the tools? The tool is a centerpiece. There are assessors. There's so much that goes into a tool. So let's today build a literacy and see also what literacy already exists. And so literacy is the state of being literate. And this is an evolution. I don't see the state as being a goal. I think spaces like this are really important so that we keep evolving and keep growing and keep building knowledge. So illiterate, there is currently still a lot of illiteracy around autism, which does go into the autism test too. And as someone who's seeking an autism test for themselves or their loved one, we have ways to break these barriers by, again, asking questions, learning more about the tools, just like coming here. But it's important that we know the areas that we are literate in. And so we'll be talking about some of that today too. So illiterate, here's the definition: cannot read or write, lacking knowledge in a particular subject. So read or write with illiteracy doesn't just mean like reading and writing like on your keyboard or with a pen and paper. It literally means being able to decode and perceive something accurately and knowledge systems. And so we need to keep this in mind because these testing tools have a lot of illiteracy in them, and they're promoting literacy of the person that is being assessed. So we need to keep all of this in mind and how important it is to build an accurate literacy of the person. So these are our pillars today. How do we improve our literacy of autism and autism testing? And we is important here because literacy doesn't just include one person, it includes a lot. So knowledge, we need to understand what knowledge and beliefs go into these autism tools, and we need to also make sure that it's all guided for autonomy and literacy that the person wants themselves and the family and loved ones. Often it's a mixed match, it's not matched correctly. So we're going to go into some of the knowledge and beliefs. We will be pausing after this first section of beliefs, so I'll pause and we can have a discussion, comments, questions. So know that is coming in shortly, and then there will be two more sections, so we'll pause in between each one. Okay, so autism evaluations, keep in mind that they contain knowledge and beliefs, they contribute to knowledge and beliefs, and they can give profound autonomy. And you'll find out later when I talk about the most common reasons that I hear that people come for the test, it's usually around autonomy and literacy of themselves in some way and in many ways. Okay, so we're going to explore this a little bit. What knowledges and what belief systems are contained in and contribute to autism evaluations? I'm going to pause here and build a piece of literacy for us that can come up in autism tests and the reports as well, which is bionic reading. So I've designed these slides, and I do try to do my blog posts and even emails and my intake paperwork and reports that I give in my autism evaluations, just in case it's helpful. Bionic reading is a particular type of making text where it's spaced out and that there's bold things. Obviously, you can tell some of the characteristics here. There are a lot of ways to do it. It takes a lot of time, but it's worth it if it reduces neurological demand on somebody, even just one person, because what happens is a lot of neurodivergent and autistic people see things more like this, and it's very exhausting. So I do have clients that have found bionic reading apps, and they run PDF files through it, they run web pages through it, and it puts it in more of something like this. Everything's spaced out, it might be moved a little bit off to the side. So reports aren't even written, in ways that some autistic folks and neurodivergent folks can read very clearly. So beliefs about autism, and you can request anything. Again, like if there's anything in this, you're like, oh, I want that in my assessment, or I want that from my assessor for my child, ask for it,
Yeah.
Really, that's part of the autonomy piece of this, is you can ask. So if it's not given to you. So beliefs about autism, just 2 slides for us to review some things you might already be aware of. Most of the language and definitions on autism are deficit driven, so defective, essentially. These quotations come from Autism Speaks. There's a lot of controversy about Autism Speaks. I did find it might be 6-page document. It's just descriptions just like this. If you're interested in looking at it after this, it might be interesting to see how you read that if your literacy of all of this changes. I'd be happy to send you the link. But a lot of it comes from the DSM and Western psychology. You can see some of this deficit-driven perspectives of social emotional reciprocity and developing and understanding, maintaining relationships, deficits in following rules of conversations. So think for a second, if somebody is wanting autonomy and literacy of themselves, and that is what is informing the autism tool, there's a huge gap there between the beliefs that are going into those tests and what the person actually wants, because this information isn't going to get somebody the literacy and autonomy of themselves that they're wanting. And one thing that I have a project called Ecologies of Autism I've had for many years. It's a YouTube channel, a blog, and it's a course that I run in cohorts every once in a while. When a cohort comes together, it was part of my dissertation project I did as well. And Ecologies of Autism, this is one of the central pillars of it, is that I don't know why we don't talk about this enough. The a lot of the descriptions and literacy that we currently have of autistics is about the obsession with what their bodies are doing. Behavior driven, of course, you know, the classic ones about eye contact, flapping hands, rocking back and forth. While there might be some patterns around the autistic community of doing that, how is that going to help someone in an autism assessment and the tool to understand themselves if that's what they are going there to do? So all of this again is informing these tools, and this is the literacy we currently have. The assessor matters a lot because some of the tools could be driven by all these beliefs, but yet you have an assessor that knows how to use that tool in a way where they can mold it and curate it to not let it take away from the autonomy at sea and literacy that are the goals. So it's tricky. And we will talk about assessors later too, and things you can ask and expect from assessors. So you have the tool and you have the assessor as well. But consider this and really think about like our literacy of autism and how all this goes into, you know, the body obsession and the deficit obsession and how all of that comes from what I call the allistic gaze. So this is one of the origins of a lot of these belief systems and these tools that is currently being reworked. Obviously, I'm here talking about this, which is a big deal. People on social media in a lot of places, like the literacy is changing really fast right now, and it's really important. And this is one of my contributions and some of my projects is the allistic gaze. Allistic means non-autistic. So historically, so the gaze is often used as a term to say someone with a perceived higher power is looking at someone with a lesser social power in some way and judging them through that lens. So this is a non-autistic, essentially looking down on a autistic. This is a framework that our literacy of autism has arisen from, sadly, just collectively. So it's the non-autistic looking at the autistic, might be even unconsciously thinking, what is wrong with them? How can we make them more like us? Why aren't they doing XYZ right? And all of this goes into the assessment tool. Something I want to say here, the allistic gaze doesn't just mean people that are non-autistic. An autistic could actually have this gaze. So if you're not autistic and you're like thinking, oh gosh, that might be me. Yeah, if you're autistic, this could also be you because we're socialized collectively to look at things this way. So building a literacy does involve everybody. Okay, this is a bit heavy. If you want to do some more research on this, you're welcome to. There is a ton. So Asperger is not used anymore or trying to not use it anymore. Some people are still unaware of this. That's okay. Some people do believe that Asperger is not being used anymore because we're changing like the levels and the kind of severities of autism and how we think about that. It's not exactly true. Hans Asperger was a Nazi physician who coined the phrase autistic psychopathy. And between him and Victor Brock, they attempted genocide of disabled folks. A lot of them, I don't know what percentage were autistic, but a lot. Children and adults. It was part of the eugenics movement, biological cleansing. Victor Brock had a gas chamber in a small town called Hadamar, and there was well done like documentary. I think it's about 20 minutes long on the disabilitiesjustice.org if that's something that interests you to look more into that history. But one reason I put this here is to just for a second sit on the history of violence of testing on autistics and the seriousness of these assessments and the assessment tools and how much weight we really need to be putting on safety, autonomy, what do people really want out of them, and making sure that the tool and how it's used is getting the autistic and their loved ones what they really want versus what the tool wants, just in case there's some hidden beliefs in there that are still, or it's going to be a while before we flesh all that out and get all new tools if that is necessary. I don't know, but yeah, just that there is a seriousness of testing on autistics because of this history. And so this is the last main slide in this section, some additional resources we don't have time to get into, but I wanted to leave you with some additional things. They are in order of like how I would prioritize looking into these. In a lot of my trainings and courses, and a lot of my clients actually too, depending on just if it comes up, this In My Language by Amanda Baggs is a really important video. It has circulated widely in disability studies in the academy. It's made its way into numerous texts on autism that have been really prolific in disabilities communities. It is around literacy, so it can again like help you understand why literacy is so important and why language is so important. It's a powerful video. So again, some of my clients that are late diagnosed autistics, I will send it to them and they're surprised and a little bit stirred about how much they relate to this person. And it does also challenge these ideas of levels of autism. And I'm not for or against the levels of autism. I think the descriptions are a bit off and could be better, but anyway, it does challenge that those preconceived ideas that some they're the high functioning, low functioning, which is kind of being reworked collectively right now. We'll see where that goes. The How Emotions Are Made, I don't recommend entirely reading this book. She is an incredible neuroscientist. It is her methodology and research methods are so detailed and stringent unless you really want to get into that. Don't pay for the book. It's great though. I would listen to some of her interviews. She's a great speaker on her work, and she, I think, understood the power of what she was doing and where her research might be going. What she did, and this is quite recent, she completely debunked the idea that we are hardwired to have certain facial expressions with certain emotions. So if we're happy, we smile. If we're sad, we frown. It's not real. So it's fascinating, and her description is really amazing. So think about how many autism tools probably have that in there somewhere.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
not even real anymore. Like, and so this is all changing so rapidly that our assessment tools are getting archaic so fast and not keeping up with all this. So that means if you're looking for an autism test for yourself or for you, mold it into what you want it to be and get in there, ask questions.
Yeah.
Liberation psychology, literacy is a huge deal, and in liberation psychology, I have 2 degrees in liberation psychology. So if you're ever interested in that field and looking up literacy within that field, there's definitely more there as well. And so just this last slide, and then we can actually pause here too and bring in any questions or conversational pieces. But just to review, so some things, and none of this is like good or bad, right? Like, well, maybe eugenics and Nazi regime, but
Oh,
like I try not to take things as only poison or only medicine, right? Like what are we doing with all this? Like how can we, I have a friend who's a writer and author, Biokoma Lafe, and he talks about composting. What of this can we take with us and compost and what needs to be trash, And so I think
mhm.
that's where we're at today. And I do believe autism tools play a huge role in how our literacy of ourselves, our loved ones are being disseminated regarding autism. So yeah, we'll pause here and take any
Yeah, we
questions.
don't have any questions in the chat box yet.
Okay.
There was one, just for me that I took care of, but please, yeah, feel free as we're going through this, whatever other questions you have. I did write down
Mhm.
In My Language, so I can go Google that later, by Amanda
Amanda
Baggs.
Baggs. Yeah, Amanda Baggs has passed and is no longer with us. I don't remember when they died.
But
Hold on.
it reminds me though that I've recently been seeing a lot of great videos on TikTok or, Facebook Reels even that are talking about, being direct with our autistic family members. And, something like, don't you have something to do right now? Is not the
Hmm.
same as saying something like, I think you have a meeting in 10 minutes that you're supposed to be at. So let's go ahead and get
Yeah.
moving. Like just
Hmm.
direct communications and the importance of all of this stuff and
Yes.
knowing what our brains have learned over all of these years
Yeah.
with psychology and society and unlearning that to relearn new things. This is fantastic. Please
Yeah,
keep going, Chris.
yeah, I worked with I work a lot with parents and loved ones of autistic, mostly partners and parents of autistic folks. And they are often so focused on behaviors, which is understandable when you live with someone day to day to day, but to get that framework and that paradigm shifted to how is your loved one processing? And it just building a different literacy in different ways makes a huge difference in people's ability to connect to their loved ones. So, okay.
Yeah.
So again, this is the gap, right? So do all the beliefs I just shared match the goals? I'm about to go into the goals that I most commonly hear around tests so that you can, if you haven't thought of these, you can write them down and consider them, ask somebody, again, do research on the test itself or the assessor. Being a good assessor does require going off script, no matter how good the testing tool is. And
Mhm.
that's not often a skill you can learn in school. It's not. You can learn it through experience and through like really trying to focus on it. But not every assessor's, I guess I should say, every assessor has their different strength of like allegiance to the tool, right? So
Mhm.
it is a really, and you can find this out by having like a consult and asking these kinds of questions. These are the most common, these are generalized, but we're going to get a little more specific for a few coming slides here. But overall, people want insight to themselves or their loved one. They want advocacy, and that could be self-advocacy. How can I advocate for my child or my loved one? Even in the home, when my child is really stressed, having a meltdown, or when my partner is like coming home from work and can't talk because they're so overwhelmed, or it can advocacy can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't have to mean formalized. Sometimes it does, though. Recommendations for anything from like psychotherapy to coping strategies to even some of the things I just shared, like what could I look into? Do you have books based on this thing you told me about myself? Accommodations is huge. I take all of this very seriously, but accommodations is really big because that's the one chance. People usually don't get more than one autism evaluation. And it's one chance
Mhm.
to really set somebody up with some different paths to reduce stress, to be able to function better. Autistic folks and neurodivergent folks are the majority of the people that come for these tests, and higher rate of cognitive decline due to just high rates of stress and demands in the non-autistic world. So accommodations are very important. This one at the top right, this one I feel like is the most missed. And this was also one of the reasons I started doing evaluations, because I was a bit frustrated about what wasn't coming out of those tests for my clients, that I was sending them to different assessors. And I do have a slide on this because it is important. And clarity, people come with I usually see people in a bit of a fog. They're like, I know something's off. I'm seeing this. What's going on? And so they really want clarity. So again, all of this is literacy. This is what literacy is. And you can see from this slide how different this is from the belief system as I just described. How does body obsession, of what the autistic's body is doing really help somebody get to this stuff?
Right.
Or deficit-driven language or thinking help us get here. And I mean us because I mean us all, the literacy that we carry with us. Okay, so the tool is the centerpiece, and there is structure around it that does strengthen the tool. So I don't know why this stuff isn't fully like the standard yet, but hopefully it's moving in that direction. Autonomy and insight and literacy of oneself can come at every stage. And if some of these things are not in place, it dramatically reduces the person's ability to share what they need to share about themselves. So people don't often offer Zoom consultations. I started doing that about a year ago. Um, Phone calls don't always work great for neurodivergent people. Even if someone isn't neurodivergent and they don't end up being autistic, usually people come to those tests pretty stressed and burnout in some way, shape, or form. And phone calls aren't always their choice. So I offer Zoom calls or Zoom consultations, ask for it. I do everything virtually too anyway, so it's pretty convenient for me. But even if the person is an in-person practitioner, you can still ask. The testing environment, years ago, I was sending my clients to a couple of different assessors that I trusted. One of them I had not met before, so I decided to go meet this person and a person of high reputation. And this assessor for us to meet put me in a little room that was an interrogation room, is what I would call it. No windows. It was a desk, kind of our table with chairs on fluorescent lights. And I started asking my clients that I had sent to that person, I said, what was that like? Like what kind of room you're in? And they described that room. And I was shocked. Um, so accommodations, make sure you ask before you go to an assessment, what's the environment like? All of these things, can I bring this? Do I get breaks? Whatever someone might need, make sure you ask for it. Post-test, encourage contacts. So this doesn't mean, let me know if you have any questions. This means if anything comes up for you before I finish writing the report, let me know and I'll put it in there. My turnaround window, I always hold the high standard of I will give this to you in 14 days. You have 14 days to process the test, session we just did. Anything you have, send it up to me on the day 13 from now. We look at the calendar. We'll call, we'll Zoom, add information. This is your report, not mine. The information you want in it is up to you. Again, autonomy, right? And so sharing the report. The last thing is within the cost of my reports, it does include a final 30-minute debriefing together. So after I share the report, that's not it. Whenever the person is ready, sometimes it's a week later, sometimes it's 2 or 3 months later. I say, contact me when you're ready, and we have a 30-minute debriefing. Sometimes they just want to talk about what it was like. Other times they really want to hone in on the report. And I always make sure to ask, again, you can ask your assessors this question and bring this up with them too, was there anything in here that you hope to be in here that isn't in here? Let's talk about it. Because sometimes that happens. People are disappointed. They're like, oh, I thought this thing was going to come out and, in the wash in this, and it didn't. And I was like, oh, maybe I missed something, like, what do you want to know about that? Or what can we talk about? So these are all things you can ask for. So this question gets asked a lot. And like I said
Mhm.
previously, the assessor is using the tool and not every assessor is the same. And it's the symbiotic relationship between the assessor and the tool makes a huge difference. So psychologist is still the bias one that everyone seems to be wanting. There are some reasons for that are completely legitimate, because it is still a bias in some institutions where they still want a psychologist to be the one to have the stamp on the paper. I personally, as an LMFT, have not had any problems advocating for my clients, and that might just be by consequence, I don't know, by the institutions, the schools, the places of employment, and otherwise that have been okay with that. But I totally get that structure is still in place. I can tell you, based on letters after somebody's name, it doesn't make a difference that if somebody is better or best or terrible at an assessment. It really doesn't. There's so many variables that go into making a good assessor that the title doesn't matter. So you have to get to know the assessor, and that's part of what I'm trying to help you all with here today, to focus on what really needs to be focused on to get you the best test and choose the right tool. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of words on this slide, so I'll just pause for a second and you can scan it. The ones on the left are the ones that are lesser, I guess, thought about. And the ones on the right, the top two right, are the most requested information. Maybe not directly, but I can tell during the assessment devices start coming out, people start writing stuff down. It gets this focus. So people just start lighting up. Well, what are you saying? What are you asking? So we'll talk about those two next. But I can tell you, not a lot of assessors are going to disclose that they are autistic. I am autistic. I don't mind disclosing that in spaces I'm comfortable with, and it does make a huge difference. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
that based on my own perception. I'm telling you this because everybody tells me that. All my autistic clients, I worked with a lot of parents and loved ones of autistic folks, and I let them know that I'm autistic, and they get to like literally pick my brain about how autistic processing works, and I can really help them a lot. And I love that work. And I have a lot of clients that have come to me because they said their previous therapists were not autistic and they were just hitting walls. Um,
Mhm.
so anyway, I think it does make a difference. And again, it's a personal decision. You might find autistic assessors and not even know they are autistic, and that might have been one of the reasons why they did a different or kind of nuancedly different job that was good. So I do think it helps. Being an excellent writer is something that is not, I think, talked about enough, because if someone's not an excellent writer, their adherence to the tool and clinical and medical language is so high that it does reduce some of the literacy and the autonomy that ends up coming out of the report.
Yeah.
Okay, so misdiagnoses, this is very important because this is a very common reason why people come to tests, at least in my experience. The top two are the most common misdiagnoses is bipolar and borderline personality disorder. A lot of people that get diagnosed with bipolar are on a handful of medications over sometimes 10 plus years, not realizing that their mood shifts are due to meltdowns, shutdowns, processing difficulties, all of these things. BPD and the language and the diagnoses there's a lot of instability around mood and relationships. And again, that's communication differences often that's built up over years are in families, in family systems, that gets really agitated. So I would be cautious with those diagnoses. And obsessive compulsive disorder is a complex one, because a lot of the autistic processing it sounds like OCD within itself.
Mhm.
There's looping. It's called the corticostriatal loop. It's a structure in the brain where information gets stuck. It happens with ADHD folks as well, in a little bit of a different way with that structure. Um, there's pattern recognition, there's like repetition, there's perseverating to problem solve. So sometimes OCD, people stop there and then realize years later, wait, there's something different going on. Sometimes people really do embrace that they are autistic and they have OCD, and that's their experience. I would never challenge that. So there's a combination there. A good assessor is going to be able to distinguish all of this and not just say, oh, you're autistic, so you can throw away that bipolar disorder. No, that's not enough. Like, why? Like, tell me why. Like, how do you distinguishing that so I can really feel confident? Because remember, people want clarity. And if all you do is say, oh, I think you're autistic, so just throw that, 10-year bipolar diagnosis or that OCD. No, it really needs to be understood. So push people if it's not clarified in the report, like, well, how do I know? Like, what is really the distinction here between these things? PTSD and CPTSD, so I know some autistics that just say if you're autistic, you're traumatized. Like it's just how it is. And living in the non-autistic world, can be really difficult. So, being able again to a good assessor needs to be able to parse that out again. Like where is autism and where is autism exacerbated by PTSD if it is present? And because sometimes people think they have PTSD and that's it, and then they realize there's autism. So there's a lot of overlap in how it presents, how it
Mhm.
feels with the processing, with the nervous system activation and deactivation that occurs with PTSD. Triggers and such can also happen with autism. So good assessors really need to get in the weeds with this and describe it. And if it's not clear, ask for more clarity. A lot of people come with ADHD that they already know for sure, no question that they are ADHD. The tricky thing here is a lot of folks want to know, okay, what is autism and what is ADHD? It doesn't exactly
Mhm.
work like that. So sometimes you can say like, oh, this is 90% ADHD and 10% autism, this thing that you're experiencing in this context. but it's usually not that distinct. It's a combination. And so again, a good assessor is going to be able to describe how they're both co-occurring. It's tricky because autism tests are not ADHD tests, at least the one I use. So there is some ethical considerations that how deep you can go into that. I do ask all of my ADHD folks, anyone that comes in with any diagnoses at all that is real or, maybe not real, how do you know that? And get real detailed information about that so you can look at all the other information and compare it. So if you have something that you want somebody to compare and they don't ask you, say, I really want you to know exactly why I think I'm OCD, or so there's a chunk of that there. All right, so this is the one I mentioned that people just start pulling out their phones and mid-assessment, writing stuff down real fast, want more information on. This is the stuff that's missed a lot. Auditory processing disorders seems to be very common, and it's missed. And what's sad about this is it causes meltdowns, shutdowns real fast, and it piles up the demand really quickly. And it also creates pretty serious risks for cognitive decline if it's not treated. One of the treatments is a particular type of hearing aid. I can tell real fast. I actually sent a client some of the audiologist I trusted 2 days ago because I asked him one question or he said something that he asked people like what sometimes, like he has a hard time hearing. And I was like, oh, and I asked him like real quick, a series of 5 questions, like, yes, yes, yes. It's like, well, you might want to look up auditory processing disorder. He messaged me the next day. He's like, okay, who's that audiologist? So it's so common and it really creates a lot of distress, anxiety. People feel alienated. Autistics already feel alienated and then they can't hear, they can't make out what people are saying. They can hear fine, but it's making out the sounds correctly. Sound localization is a question I ask. Like sometimes people, or if they're at a table, even with 2 people or 3 people, and they can't tell where the sound is coming from, it gets a little strange. Or like, oh, the bird's over in this way. Oh, wait, no, it's right there. So it really does create a lot of stress on the brain if you have APD and it's not known. So this stuff is not in most of the assessments. You just have to know about it. And a lot of people have just been living with like demand avoidance and echolalia, and they don't even realize they're doing it. So a good assessor knows how to listen for it and really get nuanced because again, with literacy, our definitions of these, if you look them up, are so bland. These assessments need to be personalized and assessors need to know that it can show up in so many ways and be able to personalize and individualize these assessments for folks. And another thing is chronic illness. Assessors need to have resources. I give a lot, as much referrals as I can, even if it's like this person might be open to acupuncture, know a good acupuncturist or two, anything. Because a lot of these people have been living with a lot of this stuff and not having the full literacy and autonomy around any of this to feel okay living like this, or even to like embrace some of the beauty of some of these things so that it's just stressful. And there's a lot of chronic illness that goes hand in hand. There's one that's becoming more common is a mast cell activation syndrome, which is it really does a lot on all different types of systems in the body. And you can't go to a traditional medicine doctor. You really need to go to like an integrated medicine doctor for that. So people need to listen for these signs. They're not just like psychosomatic illnesses. These are when the brain is under so much demand, it really does take a toll on the body. Okay, so I've clarified all of this to help you find the right tool and assessor combination because they go together. So how do you get under the autistic's mask? That's very important. Can you clarify if previous diagnoses, formal or self, was a misdiagnosis? And what about the testing materials? Is basically that all? Like, what other kinds of knowledge do you bring in? Some assessors are just so, they have so much allegiance to the tool, and that's fine. I'm not critiquing that. If that's what you want, that's fine. But if you're wanting to know what's in that test, you need to make sure all this stuff is going to get at any of these things that you want. Because otherwise you can't just rely on the person to, again, go off script if you start talking about something that's not just directly from the tool. I've put 3 more here. So neurological processing issues within autism. So that is like the auditory processing disorder and how echolalia and demand avoidance might show up. And what other mental health issues? So again, like describing like OCD patterns and talking about there might be OCD or this looks like OCD, but I can't, it's probably not as far as I can tell right now. And then the last one is really important. This goes to the holistic gaze for me because how do you adapt the test to my, for me or for my loved ones, communication differences? The assessor's communication style is not the priority. Because the person that is sharing the information, they need to be talking and sharing in the way they need to be. It's their test. And if that doesn't happen, then the literacy and autonomy drops dramatically. So if it ends up being, an extra 30 minutes, an extra 20 minutes, sharing information, after the test, these kinds of things are letting people know, like, I'm here however you need to communicate. Okay, so this is, I think, the last slide for this section. So your best tool, tests, or assessor. So going back to the beginning, the beliefs do not limit the goals. So consider that. Beyond an autism diagnosis, what are your goals? Sometimes people focus on the diagnosis itself, and it's part of my work today is to tell you there's so much you could get out of these tests. So get the most out of them. So think about misdiagnoses, comorbidity, neurological processing issues, autonomy, literacy. The last one, ethics of documentation. So these are legal documents, and they could be they could be subpoenaed at any time. So consider if you want that document sitting there. Also, the military does not like autistic people. So I do informal tests now because of this and because it's cheaper. I have a reduced rate informal test that is 3 50-minute like sessions. So it's like two kind of diagnostic sessions and conversation. I use just psychotherapy notes to go through the same rigor and integrity. And then we have a third session to just go over everything and talk about it verbally. So I do think that needs to be offered more for people because some of the reasons people don't get these tests and really want them is because they're afraid of the legal ramifications. They don't want it just sitting there.
They don't want to be labeled. There
Yes.
is a little bit of chat in the
Okay.
chat
Yeah, this
box
is a
that
great stopping point to pause.
is this a good time?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the last little bit. It's a tiny bit just to go over a little bit of the MIG-DOS so everyone knows about this one, my choice,
Okay,
but yeah.
so yeah, Almana says that she had the wrong diagnosis for 10 years and was finally diagnosed at age 53, and it was such a relief. And she said the
Mhm.
best book he asked me to read after my diagnosis, reading it before would have greatly helped, but it's called Women and Girls on the Autism Spectrum, Understanding Life Experiences from Early Childhood to Old Age. And that's by Sarah Hendricks.
Yep. I was going to actually, I was sent one question that came in last night in an email, and Sarah Hendricks was in that book was the thing that came to mind for that question, actually. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. The question was
yeah,
about that person who asked the question may or may not be here today, but
right.
why don't we go ahead and discuss a little bit about, how can you tell if it's autism or just a
Mhm.
rambunctious child?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll start real quick with Sarah Hendricks. Sarah Hendricks has some great lectures. Sarah Hendricks was late diagnosed, and then went back to school. I don't exactly know what her degree is in, like what field, but it was something related to autism. And she prefers to not be around people, I think. She said some things about that. So she has a few lectures during a short period of time, and then that's it. Yes, there's nothing else out there. But she is, I think, a therapist, as well. And she does in her videos and maybe her books use the word Asperger. I don't know what that means to her exactly. But I did send one of her videos. It's a lecture to a lot of my female clients that were questioning if they were autistic. And sometimes I still do that because I let them go through the process of watch this video, let me know what you think next week. And she does go through the lifespan a bit and why girls, which is that question that you're referring to, um, you know, present differently and why it's gotten missed so much. And it is difficult because children are being socialized all day long. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just part of the growing up process. And so it can be difficult sometimes one thing, like I mentioned before, is like the focus on behavior can be confusing. So I do think finding ways to ask questions to children and younger folks about how they're processing the world to get cues or clues about what's really going on, I think is sometimes more helpful than focusing on behavior because the behavior can be misleading. Um, Asking about fatigue is, I think, really important because I think some children and some adults it's just natural. You just push through things. And if someone is autistic and they're pushing through a lot, and they will push through fatigue when they are beyond the limit of their processing capacity. And so I see that with children a lot, that they're a lot of times their energy and rambunctiousness or whatever is sometimes because they're so tired. And
Yeah,
and so just start asking creative questions, like read some literature, think about how autistics process, and think creatively about how you could ask questions. That's what I've done with some of my parents that I work with and their kids around things like, oh, my child won't brush his teeth like ever at this. And I was like, well, is it the same time of day you ask? Is he tired? Is he not like, well, where's his favorite place? What's his favorite time of day? Well, there you go. Just like start pairing things because autistics think in associations. So thinking about processing, like associations, see if there's associative stuff going on. You can witness
yeah.
some of that, but it's about thinking differently and thinking in terms of processing versus behavior because it can be difficult that way.
We do have one other question, and then we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to
Yeah,
give you time to talk about this
sure.
specific tool. How often should people be reassessing? If you have someone at the age of 5 who was diagnosed and now they're 9 years old, should they get reassessed or how often?
It depends on the need. Like, is there something going on? Is there a different school system? Have you moved? If there's some logistical need, but if that's not in place, then why would I'm not sure why it would need to be happening. If
Yeah,
there's some it just depends. Like, is there information you feel like is missing? Again, like goes back to literacy. Do you feel like there are massive gaps in literacy that this child of themselves and you of them and people in their life of them is into where the test could actually promote an increased amount of literacy that might be needed? It really just depends. I don't think there's any like need to do it, only if you see things like that occurring. I've seen people do that mostly if they move or like a different institution needs some extra information, or if there's just developmentally, if things start looking really different and something else needs to happen.
so tell us about the MIGDAS 2.
Yeah. So this one, so this is the second version, and this is the one I use. It was actually designed for virtual, and that's one reason I trust it because I do virtual only now. It's designed for virtual also for children. So it can be used for children, adolescents, and adults, and all virtual for all three populations across the lifespan. It is strengths based, so it's accepting and it's normalizing. So yeah, the accessibility of it is really important and it's all across the board. It's accessible. And one I think is really important is this reduced demand. It's 90 minutes. It's not unusual to go over like 10, 15 minutes at the most. I don't think I've ever gone over more than that. But I call it like a not one of the most non-invasive ones. People do
Mhm.
bring up impactful life events, that are difficult. So not to say there isn't like risk there, like emotional risk, where people are like, oof, I talked about some hard stuff. However, there's no IQ test. It's not considered a big like psychological test. It's really only what is needed, and nothing more. And this is one of the main reasons that I hear that people don't get tests that want them is the
Mhm.
questions. People that are burnout, again, autistic, even not autistic, ADHD, um, really come to these tests tired and overwhelmed and sometimes in burnout and are really I feel like it's a really daunting experience to be drilled with a bunch of questions. And that's how they envision it. It's only 90 minutes versus some of them are like 8 hours.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Which makes it cheaper. The only thing about money is that it's a newer one and it's not covered by insurance. That's one of the reasons too that I do the informal one that is built around like the MIGDAS framework, the informal. test that I do. So some of the belief systems are processing differences. So that's the big, basically, crux of it. That's the language that is used. In the report, each section, which I'll show you the sections in a second, has a strengths section first and then a processing differences section. And that's the framework. And then it's more based on internal. So like there's a sensory section. And so it's not just like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, well, why are you doing that thing? Why do you
Mhm.
like things in your hand? Why do you like to, why don't you like shoes and flip-flops only? Like why? It's not necessarily based around like, okay, you do this thing. Okay, now we're going to write a bunch of analytical things about this behavior you do. No, it's like it really gets to how the person like, okay, what's that about? It's definitely individualized. And the conclusions will be consistent with autism spectrum, inconsistent or unclear. It's very rare to have an unclear one. And there is a coding, so it's subjective information and storytelling and dialogue, but there is a section that does include coding and basically calculations just to make sure you're on track for accountability for the assessor, that you're not just making just completely subjective assumptions of the data. So there is an actual data portion. And then after the data is collected, then this is the report that the person gets back. So again, each one of these has a strength section and then a processing differences section. And so these are some of the things that it can include, and a lot of the things I've already shared, like they need to be in here too if someone has a previous diagnosis or has questions about that. Again, strengths, recommendations. So good assessors need to have resources, doctors like physicians, acupuncturists, physical therapy, anything. People need to be able to have access to or understand like what might be useful. And like therapy recommendations, accommodations is huge again, really big. People need to really be paying attention to each person's like areas of life and what could be useful to reduce. And I really, really stress with people like you have neurological differences, we have to drop the demand on your brain. Like I am so protective of neurodivergent people's brains. Like life is stressful enough, and to have different processing differences and having to deal with that every day. I really push the people like, you've got to take breaks, you got to slow down, we got to get you sleeping better. So neurological literacy of self, of course, like this is like the overall takeaway here that people honestly want. And again, that has nothing to do with deficits and the body obsession, right, that we've had collectively of autistics. So this is my concluding slide. How do you know what autism test tool is best? It provides individualized literacy and knowledge for autonomy. So again, I have my bias about which tool, and it's mostly because I know how to use that tool to get what I've shared with you today. And there might be some other assessors that can use the more classic ADOS and get some of these goals met as well. So it's just a combination. So again, thank you so much for coming. It feels great to be valued for my work, my knowledge, to participate again in like collective literacy building around these tests. I've seen a lot, and I've seen, I really enjoy doing these tests, and I take them seriously, and they're fun, and it's also just, yeah, people are just hungry to learn about themselves, which is an exciting thing to be able to be in with somebody. So
Yeah,
again, if you
that's
if you want to contact me about anything, questions, again, I do 15-minute free consultations. Even if you're not looking for a service, I do trainings and coursework, and I do blog, YouTube channel. So I stay pretty active with people. So feel free to use those 15 minutes to ask me questions and talk, even if you're not seeking a service from me. And there's my website, my email. There's also other ways you can fill out the contact form if that's your preferred method. And my phone number is on there too if you want to call, text, set up a time to chat.
perfect. Thank you so much, Christina. This has been fantastic. I just have one other thing I want to bring up. We do have some more slides that you'll receive when you receive this presentation later on in your email. And you can take a look at other things that we talk about here. It's Consolidated Planning Group, our upcoming webinars. You can schedule your free consultation, but I wanted to get this out there. We have a webinar tomorrow where we are going to be introducing our new SSI and SSDI application support services and our new um, colleague, Jessica Alvarez. So if anyone is interested in that, she will actually be an advocate to sit there with you on the phone or walk you through the application for your SSI. Call Social Security for you if you're too busy or you don't want to do it or don't know how to do it. We've got this new service coming. So the webinar regarding this, kind of a chat with her about what this is going to look like, is going to be tomorrow. So everyone should go register, especially if you have questions about that SSI application or SSDI. All right. Other than that, just contact Consolidated Planning Group. We do a free consultation. We would love to meet you and help you out. Thank you again, Christina. This has been fantastic. I love the information that you presented and just we all, I think, need to keep in mind how much of a load we're actually carrying. And I forget the word for it, the fancy term for that load, but everybody carries it. And it can be very different for everybody and very different for our neurologically different folks as well. So whenever you think about you are going through something, you got to think so is everybody else. So thank you all for being here today. I hope I get to talk to you all again soon. Thank you so much, Christina. Bye bye.
Yep. Bye.